This work is called EPOCH. It starts with a vast pond from which all of life emerges, different types of evolving creatures, both imaginary and real, as if humanity could have developed in all kinds of different ways. And as you move across the vast canvas, you have different epochal moments in the history of humanity. For example, the discovery of fire, which is transformative, the discovery of hunting and fishing, which again is transformative. With this work, I was also working a great deal with light and colour, so it's divided into different sections of complementary colours. As you get to the third panel, there are these large ladders reaching up into the night sky, where you have a kind of starry night. The people are sort of reaching out for something mystical and transcendent fairly early on in the history of humanity. That's something that I think is a pretty pivotal moment. When you get to the fourth panel, there's a kind of searing moment where humanity is confronted with the inevitability that we are all mortal. And just before they reach the edge of the precipice, they're writing on the ground, kind of recording their thoughts. And that's the beginning, really, of all cultures, where things are recorded for the future, whether that's art or literature or music. On the other end of the great chasm, you have tiny little people kind of emerging from there. They, to some degree, resemble tiny ants across this vast sort of plains of time and space. As they move forward through time, there are these shadows which are reflecting the sun behind, but also they're building these very large towers, almost like ant hills. I've often been moved by the actions of ants, this tremendous industry, and I think that humanity has that same kind of diligence, labour and optimism for the future. As they move past the anthills to a kind of shoreline, it's the beginning of sort of travel, like on boats. It starts with boats reaching out into the ocean. And then there's this vast wave. It's sort of influenced by Hokusai's famous print, but it's also kind of symbolic of the power of nature, that we're these tiny creatures completely, if you like, subject to the whims of nature in all different ways, in terms of weather, climatic conditions, tsunamis, but also in terms of pandemics, as we've had recently, and all of those kind of things. But as you reach the other side of the great wave, you have this kind of shoreline where small figures, their children, start to build sandcastles. I've always thought that sandcastles are a sort of wonderful emblem of human creativity and something which runs at a very instinctive basis. Out of these sandcastles develop eventually these vast cities, glass cities. And in this panel you can see, if you see in the distance, the great skyscrapers of Chicago and New York. But at the same time, you have this great modernity developing. You also have all these figures being sort of moving away from the cities, being taken away or deported and ending up in these sort of chambers. And for me, that's emblematic of 20th century history with the genocide and the tragedies involved in that. And in the distant, you've got kind of explosions taking place, sort of nuclear explosions. When you come to this panel, there are these vast, if you like, mountains of belongings, which obviously relate to the genocide and the memory of what's happened. And if you look above, you see these empty clothes flying in the sky and around a massive blood-red sun. And for me, that's a very potent image of sort of family history. But as you emerge from that, you have my image of the alien, the upside-down figure that's crash-landed into a new place, if you like. And at the same time, the whole new world develops. So you have hundreds of people working on computers, which is emblematic of the new age. As you reach the very, very final panel of EPOCH, there are some figures. There's sort of mankind's become very advanced and sort of shoots off into space, and maybe that's where we're heading. That after all of that great story, we end up shooting off and finding other planets far away from the, if you like, from the lake or the pond where everything began.